All right, I hope everyone can hear me okay. Today it's like kind of doing something a bit different, I guess, from the usual episode. But what I was thinking of doing was making an entire game from scratch in Unity. The game is going to be very simple for this to actually finish in any sort of reasonable amount of time. But I wanted to just give you some sense of how you can, even if you're not like an amazing musician or artist, or even like an amazing game developer, like if you have like actually none of those skills, there's like loads of basic software where if you slowly get better at it, you can make really interesting games. So I thought I'd just kind of go over it and show you what's up. So the main idea, just to kind of quickly explain how this game is going to work. Basically, we're going to have so we're gonna have two characters, and they're like we're gonna have like the white character and then the black character, and then the white character is gonna shoot out like the white triangles and white rectangles. And so the point of the game is that the black character is going to be shooting these triangles, and you need to match the shape, otherwise you lose. And so the idea is, as you get a lot more of these shapes, uh, then eventually it'll be the game will be a lot harder. And if you miss one, you lose, and the higher your streak is, like you basically win. So this is just to kind of show you how I'm going about drawing this. So first off, I'm using a graphics software called GIMP. So this is free and open source. You can think of it as a sort of alternative to Adobe Illustrator. So if you're already paying for that, like you can probably just use that and you'll do fine. So you can see here that we have the, where is it? Preferences. Yeah, so you can see here like I'm sort of drawing like all the art assets in the same place. So now that this stuff is done, I'm just gonna use the rectangle tool. Where is it? And move these. Was it this? Okay, no. Okay, this is fine. We can just keep this stuff here for now. It's not gonna matter too much. So anyway, so back to the ink tool. Like let's say I'm gonna draw a character, and let's say the character we're gonna be controlling. Okay, let me the white color again. Fuck's sake. Okay, this is bugged out. Let me open this up again. So yeah, in all cases, like the goal here is to be educational. So if you have any questions about any of the above, let me know. So we're going to be basically using GIMP for the art, Terry Kavanagh's Bosca and Uscali for music, and then we're going to be using Unity to actually hook everything up together. Bosca Seol, sorry. I mean, so while this is opening, maybe we can just go to the music. I don't know why GIMP is so slow sometimes. Yeah, so basically you can see the way this works here. Like we have this piano roll that's going to tell us like how the music's going to be progressing. So we want something very simple. Like I'm not a composer. Like I've never taken any sort of music class except some basic bass stuff, and I also sucked at it. But just to kind of show you what's going on here. So let's say if I start putting in some characters here with some keys. This sounds awful. So we're like, and it's actually really hard to make something sound good if it's not repetitive. Like that's sort of where you need to just like know what's up with music. And I would say like one of my observations seeing a lot of indie games is that even though a lot of artists do end up, sorry, a lot of game developers do end up making the art themselves, very few actually make the music, and I think there's a good reason for that. So basically, we're going to go here to the top of this tab and just go to the instrument, and I'm going to add a new instrument. And I kind of like drum kits, so I'm going to select the drum kit, and then let's say a MIDI drum kit here. And so everything is kind of easy if you start with C major. So let's see, let's no, this is too much. Let's try this. Okay, let's try something like this. Okay, sure. So we have some sort of beat here. And so I guess the next step is to just add like maybe just one thing on top of it, like with a higher pitch. So what we do is like when we go to arrangement here, we're gonna add a new arrangement. So then we're gonna go here, and then we're gonna add a new instrument, and we're gonna call this like again. I think there was a bell. Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna drag this so they play at the same time. Oh, this is sounding. Oh, the maracas. I see. So we want a. Okay, I'm thinking we want a hi hat. So that's our snare maybe. Okay, so obviously you could put a lot more work in here, but this is sort of like gonna be the basic idea. Like you come in, like like of course you can play around a lot with this. You can learn music theory, you can do all sorts of stuff. But here's a sort of repetitive beat that I have. If you want to do a sound effect, you can imagine that you would just like pick one note or something. But you could, or you could use like more complicated software like Ableton Live. I'm not an expert at that, so I'm not going to teach you how to use it. I'm not an expert at this either, but this is actually very easy to use, which is why I'm using it. But here's the idea. Like you basically come in and you basically make sound clips. You arrange them all for different instruments. You arrange them all on the same plane. And then you finally come in here and you go like, okay, I'm going to export this, and we're going to export it as a WAV file. So once it's exported as a WAV file, now's the time to actually start setting up like the game in Unity. So we have this here, and I'm calling it Line Shooter. So if we go to, I think this is supposed to be here somewhere in Dev, and then let's see, Unity tutorials, yeah, Line Shooter. And so we're gonna add it here to our assets, and so I'm just gonna call this folder music, and let's call this file yeah, like background music. Right? Okay, great. So, like I said, we just did something super simple, but it gave us like some music that we can leverage for the rest of the tutorial. And so this should be here. So let's see if it works. I should be able to play it from here. Sorry. Yeah, so you notice already like this is giving like obviously the kind of music you decide will determine like the vibe of the game. So this is already, I think, setting up the stage that this is like an intense arcadey game, because like it's like you feel like, okay, I want to go, and that is actually exactly the feeling I'm going for in this kind of game. I want it to be fast and fun. And so yeah, I mean this gives us what we need. So let's do the art next, and after that we'll start hooking up everything in Unity. So first off, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say I want to create a new page. I'm going to make this huge because I want to be able to comfortably draw stuff without having to worry. So I'm going to come in advanced options, and I'm also going to make it transparent. So this will help us later when we're importing stuff into Unity, so that like the difference between the background and the stuff that we're drawing becomes very clear. So it'll let us import everything, even though it's drawn in the same place. So let's do that. So let's see. I like the ink feeling, so I want to come in here, and let's first off I want to draw our character. So let's say our character looks something like this. Sorry. Right, so our character looks like this. And I want it so that when they shoot the projectiles, I want them to look the exact same. But I want the difference to be that I want to just change the mouth to like an open mouth. That way it's sort of like, oh, so it gives this feeling that like we're going to be shooting it shooting the projectile from the mouth. So it's just gonna like burst out basically. I want to do the exact same thing for the other character. So basically, let me do this. And then I want a way to mirror it. Let's see. So edit, mirror. Let me just quickly Google this. Mirror image GIMP. Click on the flip tool. Oh, there's a flip tool. I mean, you can tell like this is not software I'm an expert at, but part of it is that you don't really need to be an expert to do like basic stuff. Like you can either be like a decent artist, like my sister, for example, or you could just like hack this shit together like this. So let's do this as well. Like, I mean, I want to have a different color for this guy, so let's try red. Let's see, so, and then change fill shape of drawing again. Change color after drawing. Yep. Let's try and see. Oh, okay, so it's the fill, I guess. Let's see, where's the bucket? And then can we fill it? How does this work? Okay, this doesn't work. This doesn't work either. Okay, maybe this is fine for now. I just need to still find a way to do the mirror. Let me keep checking. How to flip. Horizontal, if you click anywhere, it will flip horizontally. Okay, color picker, no, path, smudge, clone. Deform. Also no. Also no. Okay. Okay, so for now, I guess this is not ideal. Obviously, I just want to show you a time-saving hack. But I think what I'm going to end up doing is that, let's see. So first off, I want to create a new folder. Let's say call it GIMP. And then I'll save this here. I'll say line shooter art. And so no such file or directory. Huh? Okay, we could always just export it out. So, okay. So we just said like this is like we're gonna have this. These are our guys, and then the next thing we want to do is we want to draw the projectiles that we're gonna be shooting out. So these are the things like we'll be instantiating at every time step where, like, let's say you push a keyboard shortcut. So this is gonna look like we're gonna have two shapes. Let's say we're gonna have one as a triangle, and the other one will be a square. Right, so we want to do the same thing now for like the other character. Let's do this. Right, and then this. So they don't even have to look the same, which is kind of what's nice about this. Like, it doesn't really matter. Like, it maybe gives it more of a hand-drawn vibe. Of course, if you're like using these as like, I don't know, physical assets, then yeah, like it would be better to just use the exact same one. But for now, it's fine. Let's draw the bad character. So let's do this, for example, and like also like has like these nasty eyebrows. And then we're gonna do the exact same thing and make them open their mouth when the projectile happens. Right? Yeah, so far so good. So right now what we can do is like we just need to come and we need to save this. Great, it's saved. So far this works. And after this, what we come in and we do, we want to export this out. to a PNG. So basically now we're going to say this is the line shooter. I'm going to call it a sprite sheet, and you'll see why in a second. So yeah, so interlacing, save gamma, save resolution. Okay, I don't know what any of this stuff means, so I'm just going to say yes. But great. So now back to Unity. Like, let's think about what has happened. Like, we did the music, and if you have any question about that, just like let me know. This was the main beat we're gonna pick. Maybe we'll make it lower later because it feels a bit loud in my headphones right now. Probably in yours as well. But let's do this. Like, let's export in the art. So I'm gonna create a folder, and I'm gonna call it art. And then inside the art folder, we're going to go back here, and then we're going to go to, I believe it was documents, and then GIMP. And then, yes, so we want to export in the sprite sheet. So already you'll notice, like, Unity is calling this like a sprite map. And so what we're going to do here is that because, like, typically if you're drawing, like, basically one object at a time, like where basically each PNG is an independent object, then you can just do nothing and you just click apply here. But in our case, what happened was that we drawed everything in the same place, which is more convenient. Let's say if you're working with an artist, I'll just send you one image. And then you come in here, and then at sprite mode, you click multiple. And then you go to the sprite editor. So in the sprite editor here, it's basically you need to come in and say slice, and then you say slice automatically. And then you apply, and you see. So by itself, Unity cleaned them up and created like basically completely different assets for each one. So this is basically what we're going to be working with now. So like, let's say we're going to call them, we want to rename some of this. How do I rename it? Can I rename it? Okay, looks like rename. Okay, looks like I cannot rename it. That is fine. Like, I can always just like refer to them directly here. But here's what we're gonna do now. So I want to just show you something like very basic. Like, I'm gonna come in and put this thing in here, right? So great. So now we have now we have this character here, and like, let's say we're gonna come in here. We're gonna have this. Say like this. And what I want, like, actually maybe I'll make it even simpler right now, just like keep one of the characters. So we want to just test out the animation, right? So how does an animation work in Unity? Like, we've basically made this, and then we want it to flip to making this thing. So it's saying right here, like, I opened up the animation sprite sheet, and if this is not open by default, you just need to click Control-6 and it would open. But we're going to create an animation. And then in assets as well, we're going to basically create a new folder for animation. And I'm going to call this animation open white mouth. All right. So great. So once this animation is open here, we need to figure out now how to transition it to the other one. So we're going to click here, add property. So here. Actually, no, we're not going to do this like this. So we're actually just going to go to the animation itself. And we're going to open this up in mechanism here. So what's happening here? So actually, like, maybe I'm going to need to rename some stuff. This is the animation controller. Okay, so this is what's going to let us like transition between all of the animations. But basically, when we come in here, we want to say, let's say here, open white mouth. Yeah. Yeah, so basically it's gonna, first off, this is not, yeah, like my names are bad. Like this should have been like open with closed mouth. Here. Let me think about this. Okay, so we have the sprite sheet. Here, interesting. And it's just, I see, renaming it line shooter sprite sheet 0. Yeah, that's fine. We can, I guess, give it a better name here. Oh, it is working. Why is it working though? Okay, so we could always have a more interesting background as well. So like right now I'm just using like this default skybox. Uh, but I guess like, yeah, so since we have one white, one black actor, we're gonna need like some sort of other color. Let's see what looks nice. Okay, yeah, I'm into this blue, I think. So let's see how this looks. Oh, I see. So you'll see here, like it'll show you a preview. And so the way the game's gonna look like is that they're gonna be shooting these bullets at each other, and these guys are gonna basically get instantiated, fly along like a line, and once they hit the correct matching color, it would get removed. So that's sort of the main idea of the game today. And we could do like, I mean, there's an infinite number of stuff you could do here. Like, let's say when it increases, you increment the score, or like instead of losing, is just like your streak counter or something, and make the bullets faster. So like, I don't know if we're gonna get the chance to do all of this today, but at least like we'll get some of the main ideas up and running. So I mean, back to the animation then. So we said here, when we come in, we want to create an animation for this guy, and we called the animation open white mouth, right here. So basically this is a state machine. So this is going to come in and it's going to say, okay, well, as soon as the sprite gets instantiated, it's going to start here, and then it's going to do this open white mouth animation, and then we want to set up, so in this case it's basically going to go to its default state at the closed mouth, but we want it to make it so that we start opening the mouth, and then later we'll add an event that will trigger it. So let me just remember how this works. Let's see, empty state. Oh yeah, so the motion, and so let's see. So we should be able to give it the motion here. Let me just quickly Google this. So animate from to sprites unity. So just make a sprite with the first of your animation sprites. Okay, and then open your animation window and click on your sprite in the history. For the animation, your project window, and drag it into the animation window. Oh, interesting. Okay. This is not too bad. I mean, so that's what I thought initially. So let's see. So if I click back on the animation here, and then I go to my art, I should be able to just drag this guy here. Oh, so with the sprite sheet selected, can I drag it? No, this does not work like this. So let's see. Now mark all your sprites for animation in your project window and drag it into the animation window. Open your animation window and click on your sprite in the history. Okay, this is not what we want to do. Okay, let's just get rid of this guy for a second. We'll just focus on our guy here. So we said we want to, so we click on him in the, I mean, I believe when they said history, the guy meant hierarchy. And then come in here. Oh, okay, yes. This should work. It did not work? Why not? Let's see, what does the game do? Okay, it sort of worked. Yeah, okay. So we just need a better way to control it now. So we can see that it's like transitioning between the two animations. So we're doing something right. Okay, so what happens if I just, let's say, create a... But like, so ideally, like, why am I confused? Because ideally this should create uh, basically another state. And we want each of the two states to correspond to different parts of the animation. So I mean, if I, let's say if I just take this and move it, like make the animation take 5 seconds, what happens then? Interesting. Okay. So this is the controller again. And so back to the art, if I come in and put something in here, nothing happens. Okay, I can figure some of this stuff out later. Like we can definitely get back to this, but like I agree, this is like very crucial. So what we're gonna do next is we're basically gonna create like a shooter, like a shooting manager. So this is gonna be an empty game object, and I'm basically gonna call this like shooting. Actually, we don't need to even do this. So what we're gonna do is here on this main sprite sheet, I'm gonna rename it to player. And then I'm gonna create, so I'm gonna set up a script here, and I'm gonna call it shoot. Script shoot already exists. Okay, well, where is it? Assets. Okay, great. So here, like, I'm gonna, because I like to have everything nice and neat, so I'm gonna also set up a script, a folder called scripts. We're gonna put shoot inside here. And then if you go to the player character here, you'll notice there's now a script called shoot attached to it. So basically, this is just now gonna do some behavior. So we're gonna define what this behavior is right now. So basically, when this starts, at the very first frame, this is start is when we initialize some stuff, and update is something that's going to happen once every frame. So what do we need to do? Like, right, let's ignore the start part for a second. Like, what we want to do is, I'm just going to write the pseudocode for it, and then like we're actually going to implement it. This is me thinking in Python. But basically what we're going to do is this. Like, let's just set up like a nice to-do list for ourselves. So basically every time the user clicks, let's see, every time the user left clicks, shoot a triangle, and every time user right clicks, shoot a square. Right, so we're just gonna for now do this behavior. And so what does shoot mean? So first off, like after the click, we're gonna decide the kind of shape. The next thing we need to do is we need to instantiate the shape a few steps to the right of the player. So basically, we want the shape to show up like somewhere around here, right? The third thing we want to do is then we want to make the shape keep moving all the way to the right of the screen. So at a high level, what's going on? Okay, so let's think about this. So the first thing we need to do, like we said, is we need to decide, well, which one, like what did the user do? Did they click the left or did they click the right click? So for that, we're gonna just go Unity detect a left or right click. Yeah, so you'll see here. So if input get, yeah, On, write down, invoke. Yes. Get mouse button down. Input Unity input get mouse button down. Oh, interesting. There's all 3 clicks, right? So I actually kind of like this. Like, I'm just gonna borrow this whole thing as is because it'll just help us like debug what's going on. And that way, like we'll just be sure that everything works before we add more functionality on top. So great. So let's look at this. Basically, there like Unity has something called the input manager, which is saying like, well, button 0, that's probably left click. This is right click, and then this we're not gonna need the middle click for now, so we can just get rid of this. And let's see if this works. I mean, let's just see. Oh yeah, so you see here, to the bottom here, it's saying press primary button, and then if I left click, why is it hanging? It's interesting, it's only doing about 2 clicks before it hangs, but it just feels just kind of laggy, I guess. This may be fine, so let's just keep going. Make sure this could just be something with the debug. So basically, the next thing we're gonna do now is that we said that the shoot script needs to decide which prefab to instantiate. So basically, we're gonna here basically have something like public. I don't know if it's prefab exactly or it should be like public game object, and then we're gonna call this like 1. We're gonna call it white square, and then we're gonna have another game object for white triangle. So let's look at what changes now. So we're basically saying this shooting script needs the following 2 kinds of game objects to be able to shoot, and it needs a reference to what they actually are. So now if you go back to the... Oh, whoa. Yeah, so we're going to come in here and... yeah, so you'll see here that like now we have like a location where we can drag the white square and the white triangle. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our art, and then I'm going to drag here the white triangle. Well, actually, there's a different way of doing this. Like, I'm going to, first off, like we need to make these like prefabs. So, come on. Yes. All right. So basically, I'm going to here rename this, and I'm going to say this is, I'm going to call this, sorry, this is... Yeah, so we're going to rename this the white square. And then we're going to rename this to white triangle. Right? So it looks like we have a second square here as well. Okay, let's get rid of this guy. Okay, great. So we have these guys now. And then when we go to the player object, we can now drag these game objects. So first off, here I'm going to come to player and I'm going to lock this so that it doesn't keep going away. And then when I click here, I should be able to drag this game out. So like white square, it should be white square, and white triangle, it should be white triangle. Why is the triangle over there? I don't know. So I believe then we can just come in and delete this here, and then it should just stay in the... Actually, yeah, let me just double check on one thing. So Unity prefab. So create 3D object. Is there prefab anywhere? This is like some of the small minor details I keep forgetting. But yeah, like you should use prefabs when you want to instantiate game objects at runtime that do not exist in your scene. So let's see. Unity, how to create a prefab. By selecting asset, create prefab, and then dragging an object from the scene. Okay, asset, create. I don't see it. I just remember this being like a very ordinary, boring thing that's present everywhere. Okay, yeah, so you see here, like a game object is something that is like basically always on the scene. Think of it like a, I don't know, like an object, like a map, but then a prefab is something with like a temporary lifetime that's created a lot. So something like a bullet, for example. So yeah, they said assets. Is there a prefab anywhere here? No. Create. Prefab variant. That's regular prefab. Okay.
Hello, my name is Jimmy Vegas. Sub main scene here using I want to get on rocket and one object scene. Okay. Okay, you'll notice this is also turned blue, which indicates that yes, it has worked. So we could simply just drag and drop this there, and it creates a. Let's say you need. And let's say, for example, I want to make a copy of it rather than create a bunch of game objects. You can easily create prefabs in Unity 5. So a prefab is essentially just a collection of objects down here in your asset window, which you can bring into your main scene, rather than create a bunch of game objects. So, for example, I've created this rather simple looking rocket right here, using a couple of different objects from the game object menu. And let's say, for example, I want to make a copy of it rather than go through Control-D to duplicate, blah, blah, blah. Best way to do it is if you go to Game Object, Create Empty, and I'm just going to rename this one Rocket Ship. And then I have a collection of 5 objects which make up this rocket, which is just here. So I'm going to select them all.
Yeah, so I do want to mention that instead of like creating these complex 3D models, like you can use Unity's editor to just assemble shapes together and then group them all together, and then you can end up doing something complex like a rocket. So you don't have to strictly learn Blender, but I mean, if you're doing photorealistic stuff or whatever, which you probably shouldn't be doing for a first game, you can do this instead.
Onto rocket ship. So now that becomes one object. Now, although that is pretty good as it is, let's say you need to put that in a new scene. So, drag and drop that rocket ship down here into your assets.
Oh, that's it. I knew it was something derpy and simple like that. So I'm going to create a new folder and I'm going to call this prefabs. Right? And then if I double click on prefab, I'm going to put the white square and the white triangle. Okay, I'm just going to click on white square. Yeah, see now it's a dot prefab. And then I want to click on white triangle, and it's also a prefab. So you see here, like the guy was saying earlier, like these turned to blue here. So that means this worked. So now if I delete these, even though they're no longer in the scene, there's still prefabs that I can instantiate at will. So great. So first off, like the main thing we want to do is we said here, like let's go back to our so here. So we said we want to instantiate a prefab, right? And so the difference is going to be if basically we're going to, let's say prefab. See, first off, let's look at how to instantiate prefab Unity. I think it's just, right? So yeah, so it's my game object, my prefab. And then you just say instantiate the prefab at the new vector. Okay. So we're going to basically say, okay, so at every update, we're gonna have a game object prefab. So let's call it like projectile prefab. Is declared but never used. Okay, that's fine. Then if if the mouse button is gonna be left, we said like let's instantiate it to white square. So we basically say instantiate. I mean, yeah, I guess we don't even need this. It feels like. I mean, let's see if we need a reference to it. I'm not sure. But yeah, we're basically just gonna instantiate white square, and then we're gonna instantiate it at new vector 3. So basically, I think this should just instantiate it at the location of where we're shooting. So we're gonna change this in a second. And quaternion identity is basically saying we want like just a default rotation for this thing. So let's just make sure this works. And so I come in here and I'm going to do the same thing. And I'm going to say white triangle instead. And then don't forget the semicolons. And this should work so far. Okay, let's test this out and see if it works. So yeah, Unity is just lagging here a bit because it's loading the new code changes. So the variable white square of shoot has not been assigned. Oh, okay. So basically what happened here is like when we deleted the game objects, like we forgot to add the prefabs. So I'm just gonna drag a white square here, and I'm gonna drag a white triangle here. I'm also gonna go grab some coffee. I'll be right back. Alright, sorry about that. So let's try this again. Let's see if it works. Okay, yeah, it works. And so you'll notice here that as like every time I'm clicking, there's a new triangle or a square being created, and they're all clones of each other. But you'll notice like they're first off being created at the center of the screen. So it's being literally created here at 0, 0, 0. And instead, what we want to do next is we want to instantiate it. Okay, so first off, let's just make some small changes. I definitely want this to have some physics. Sorry, a collider. Actually, we'll get to the collider logic in a second. But you see, we're getting closer now to like what we're trying to do. So the next thing we said is instead of putting it here, I want to instantiate these here a bit to the right. And so first off, like what we basically said is I want to figure out like the current coordinates of the player prefab. And then from the player prefab, I want to increment a bit to the right. And so along the x coordinate, since this is 2D. Right, and then I also believe, given that this is 2D, I believe this should work the same way. So let's just test this out. It's funny that it didn't fail, because I guess like it wouldn't fail just because it's still like, yes. So this is still working fine. Doesn't even really get thicker because it's the exact same thing, but we just see here this being filled up, which tells us it's working correctly. Let's get back to Unity. Yes. So what happened to my to-do list? So we said first thing is we want to figure out, so this was step 1. Instantiate game object at current position plus a bit in the x direction. So that's step 1. And then step 2 is move the game object to the right. So we may need to like not just instantiate this by default, but like we'll get there in a second. So basically what I want to say is at the start, I want to figure out the current position of the current game object. So get position of object Unity. Get position of current game object Unity. So I believe it should just be transform.position. Let's see. So player, I'm gonna call this like float. Oh, actually no, it's a vector2. I'm gonna call it player position, and it's equal to transform.position. The transform attached to this game object, yes, correct. And so then the next thing I want to do is I want to set up and say the vector2 of the bullet position is equal to transform.position equals transform.position. Actually, yeah. So it's like new vector2. All right. And so it's going to take the transform.position dot x plus, let's say 1. Like we'll adjust this in a second. And actually, maybe we can even make this a public variable. Like we'll call it position. I'm gonna make this a float, position increment, right? And then we're just gonna say here plus position increment. And then so that's the position in the x-axis, and then in the y-axis we're not actually gonna do anything different, so we're just gonna say something like this. So does this work? So vector2 can't be created like a number, so I believe this should work like this. All right, so let's see if this worked. So error semicolon expected. Where? Of course. Why is this ambiguous? Just use Unity quaternion. I mean, just don't use this, I guess, at all. I think we should be good. All right, great. So now we can go back here. Let's see if this worked. Okay, didn't. I'm suspecting because we're not. Yeah, we didn't actually change this. So I'm gonna put here bullet position. Yeah. So what we're then gonna do is we're gonna say we have a private float. Sorry, private vector2, and we're gonna call this bullet position. So basically, this is just gonna basically get instantiated to the value here. And then that means then we can access this variable in this other function. So let's see if this works. For fuck's sake, why is this not working? Okay, so maybe the best way to test this then is to then say, oh, position increment is 0 initially. Oh, but if it's 0, the object should have been instantiated to the player position. Okay, I don't think we need this. Okay, so why is this not working? Let's think about it. So we're saying the bullet position is basically it's a vector two of. I mean, maybe what we'll do then is this, like just debug here, and then when we come here, it should let us know exactly the values that are being passed in here. Okay, let me attach this. Okay, let's get out of the game, enable debugging. Okay, let's try this again. Oh, interesting. Program Unity has exited. I mean, let's attach this to Unity and see what happens. Okay, I'm gonna get out of the game as well. Is it still running? Yes. Okay, now let's do this. Okay, great. So when we come into bullet position here, it's saying the position is still 0, 0. Why? What's transformed that position? Yeah, so if we look at this, transform that position dot x. I wonder if this is, I think this is some sort of bug where if you ask for transform position, it gives it to you in local coordinates instead of the global coordinates. So according to itself, the object should always be at 0, 0. It's like those heliocentric way of seeing things. Oh, I see. Yeah, it should be local position. Okay, yeah. Let's try this. So, and this is sort of what's nice about this stuff. Like, I mean, that's why I really like Visual Studio because like it's just easier to do these kinds of debugs relative to other kinds of programming IDEs. Let's see. So transform local position, yes. So that's what we wanted. Plus position increment, and then transform local position dot y. So bullet position. Why is it never? No, it should be. No, this should work. Let's try this out. For fuck's sake. Okay. So let's do the debug again. Attach this to Unity. Come back here. Okay, so it's still saying, let's continue. Oh, it is correct. It's saying it should be 8 minus 2. So then I think we need the next breakpoint here, which is at the update function, to make sure it's actually being passed. Let's continue. Right. So now when it comes to instantiating the bullet position, it's actually 0, 0 here for some reason. Why? So one simple fix, it's not ideal, but we could just recompute this at every time step, right? So this will be slower because basically for every bullet that you do, you need to do this math. One thing that's kind of interesting about games is that it's like unlike pretty much all other software, like games that are slow are not considered playable. Whereas like let's say a machine learning model that runs slow, like you could always say, oh, it's complicated, you know. It's like I think it's just a question of maturity. Okay, so I don't need this, so let's say come in here. Okay, great. So we came in here and we said bullet position. If you continue. Okay, yes, it's working now. Okay, yeah, so I think it was just some weird issue with how the value is being overwritten. So first off here, we don't need this. And then we don't need this either. The start function can be empty. We can get rid of the breakpoints because we don't need them anymore. Maybe debug the issue. So now what we need to do is just like fix the increment, right? So let's just see the difference. So I'm gonna try an increment of, I don't know, 2. Okay, let's you see, like, this is, it's getting close, but it's not quite. I'm gonna try 4. Okay, I think this is perfect. Great. So now if I click this, yes, they all do the same thing. Great. So now what's left? So basically, these prefabs should have physics associated with it. So at every step, this prefab should now keep moving to the right of the screen, and eventually it's going to collide with stuff, and that's when we deal with physics and stuff. So there's two ways to think about movement in a game like Unity. I'm thinking out loud here. I was wondering what's easier. So one way to think of it is basically the squares and triangles is a physical object. You apply a force on it, and then this force moves it forward. Or you just simply change its x coordinate over time. So at every time step, just change its coordinate, and then it should be in good shape. So let's see. So I mean, if we go to the prefab here. White square. Interesting. So something's a prefab. It doesn't look like I can directly add code to it. So now I'm thinking, like, do I? And this is actually something I think a lot about whenever I make games. Is like, do I add the logic to move the bullet on the player, or do I add it on the thing on the prefab itself? I'm actually debating putting it on the prefab itself. I just need to think about how to do that. So let's see. So add a script to prefab. If it wasn't possible, Unity wouldn't be very helpful. You can drag prefab to the hierarchy, then apply changes to the prefab. Oh, I see. Okay. So let's do this. But like, why is it still showing me the player here? Oh, because I have it locked. Okay, yeah, sorry, that was my bad. Okay, yeah, great. So now we're basically gonna call this script move, right? So it's super straightforward. And we're gonna add the exact same script both on the triangle and on the square. So the way this is gonna work is we're basically gonna say, so at every update step, we're gonna take the transform dot position dot x equals transform dot position. I mean, let's try something like this: plus equals 0.1. Interesting. So I can't change it directly. So what I'll do is this: like, first off, get the position and then transform it. So let's say I'm gonna call this like vector2 position, and then this is equal to transform dot position dot transform dot position, right? Okay, this works. And so the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say transform dot position equals new vector 2 position dot x plus 1 position plus y plus 1. Any errors? So vector 2 is ambiguous. Okay, same shit. Okay, now let's see if this works. Actually, no, why am I changing? But I just want to change the x, so I think this stays as is. Okay, and I also need to add the move script to the white triangle. So I'm going to do that right now. So you see, I don't need to explicitly add component, and then move should be in the scripts. It still works fine, and then I can, I believe I should be able to remove the prefabs from here. Let's see if this works. Okay, not quite. Something's still off. Let's see. So, first off, what the fuck is this square? Okay, we don't need this. Okay, let's think about this. So, back here, looks like the move script disappeared. So I'm going to add component move, and I'm going to add component move as well. Now let's try this again. I think maybe there was an issue when we moved the script. Okay, so it's just super fast. Let's make this way smaller and see how this works. Where was it? Yeah, so then we said move game object to the right. And that's pretty much actually all the player needs to do. It just instantiates these game objects, and then once they're instantiated, they can just do their own thing. So I would rather they have a reference to the score, actually. So I would rather just have this code be as simple as it is right here. Where was it? Oh, move. So scripts, move. All right, so I'm going to do something very tiny. Let's say 0.001. Now let's see if this is more reasonable. All compilers as before. Cannot convert from double to float. Okay. Okay, this. I mean, it could have done it. Like, I don't know. Yeah, let's go back here. Let's reloading the scripts again. Okay, now this is just too slow, basically, to be perceptible. Let's try this. So that should be 100 times slower than what we saw earlier, but the other one was just way too slow. Okay, looks like it's working. Pew, 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 pew. All right, so there's still like a few things we need to fix here. You notice that like we want to maybe add a delay for how many you can do, so some sort of cooldown. So let's just actually do that next. Otherwise, you can just spam it like this, and I don't think this is super interesting. So let's do that right now. So okay, so this should be back in the shooting script because this is a property of the player. And I'm going to call this like public float, and I'm going to call it cooldown. That way we can, so like, you may have noticed like I'm making a lot of stuff public, but like here's the thing, like ideally, let's say I'm working with someone else on a game like this, I want to be able to, for them to be able to make changes to the game by simply and sort of tweak it and see what's more fun by just changing stuff here. Like ideally, I want the people I'm collaborating with who are not programmers to have an easier time, and so making this here is a lot better. So let's just see, because I think for cooldowns we need to set some sort of timer how to implement cooldown in Unity. So let's see. And time is greater than next fire. Okay. Fire rate, next fire. Next fire is time plus fire rate. Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah. This makes sense. All right. So if we go back here, we said instead of calling it cooldown, we're gonna call this fire rate. And then the second thing I noticed was this. It's a private variable called next fire. Yeah. So private float. I call this next fire. So the next time you can fire. So when we come in here, we set up the position, and then we ask ourselves, what's the next fire, and then I think this should default to something one. So yeah, let's do this first, like next fire, and then if you come in here, like we're gonna save this in Unity. So let's say 1. So here we're basically saying you can fire a bullet like once every second. So yeah, so once this is done, I wanna then say next fire equals time plus fire rate. Right? And so how do we set up the very first iteration? Does it... And time is greater than next fire. Okay. So if this and time is greater than next fire, and then we're gonna say this again here, time is greater than next fire. All right, so let's try this now, see if this works. Okay, so it stopped working completely. So I think I'm pretty sure I broke something. Let's see here. So is this ever going to be true? Like, we can just come in and debug, and then this lets us see the values of fire, next fire, and time rate. And then we'll be able to tell. So I'm going to attach this to Unity, and then go back to Unity, and then run this and see what happens. Okay, so if we look at it here, so time, like what's up with these zeros all the time? Like, yeah, next fire here, because it's 0 plus 0. Okay, sure. So if we continue, what's the new time? Okay, yeah, so 0.02 seconds have passed. Sure. What happens if we keep going? So next fire. So it's interesting, like the next fire seems to be incrementing correctly here. So this feels like it should work. And then the bullet position, yeah, I mean, this should also work. So let's just make sure that we're not doing anything weird. Let's go back to Unity. I'll stop debugging. Maybe I should have just waited longer. Let's see. Okay, 3, 2, 1, go. 3, 2, 1, go. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, nothing. This is certainly not working. Let's go back and think about this. If time.time is equal to next fire rate, debug. Time.time is equal to next fire. So where do I update this? Oh, I guess after the fire, maybe that's the issue. I mean, let's try it like this then. Derpy. I mean, I think this should default to 0 if I'm not mistaken, but let's debug again. Alright, great. So when we come in here, it tells us time.time is equal to 0 and next time is equal to 0. So how about we just do greater than or equal? I always forget it's like this, so it's like this, right? Say attach this to Unity. And then let me remove the debugs for a sec. Wah. All right. So, well, there's something interesting about this too, is that like, well, if there were different spells, like imagine this was a MOBA, then each of the cooldowns would be a bit different, so it would be okay to have this sort of pattern. So I think this is maybe not all that bad to have these extra lines. It's not that much more bloat, honestly, to the code. It's not a huge deal. But why is this not working? I think the default for floats is 0 anyways, so this should work just fine. Let's go here. Let's see. Maybe there's another solution. So you can set up a cooldown counter. So if weapon cooling down, yeah, I kind of like this too. Let's try this. So instead of the fire rate and cooldown, we're gonna set up a cooldown counter, and then are we cooling down? So if not cooling down, then we can do all of this, right? And then we don't need any of this. Okay, just so let me call them here. And if we are cooling down, else cool public. This is public, and then this is gonna be private. cooldown counter minus equal time dot time. Time dot delta time. Oh, I see. Yeah. And then if cooldown counter less than or equals to 0, then in that case cooling down equals to false. Okay, let's try this. Okay, looks like the cooldown isn't. So either it's not working entirely or the cooldown counter is very low. So maybe let's make this something bigger so that we can actually see the difference. Yeah, so I see this is not working at all. Or like, so if cooldown counter, sure, and then if RB cooling down initially it's false, so you come in and you do your action, sure. And then at every time step you decrease the cooldown counter. If it's greater than 0, then you can cool down. So when do we set cooling down equals to true though? Oh, I see here. So, okay, yeah, that's why it wasn't working. So now we say cooling down equals to true. So this should work. Okay, it was just too long, but this is working actually now. Let's try one. That's interesting. So it only works once, then it stops working. Okay, so let me just put this here as a note. So the next few things we need to do here is, so I'm gonna type in here like to do. The cooldown only works for the very first bullet, then stops working. Need to debug this. And then the next to do I want to do is set up the animation properly, so between the mouth opening and closing. Then the third thing I want to do is add physics to the prefab where they can detect collisions. So that's actually fairly easy to do, so let me just show you how to do that right now. So if you go here to Unity, and then we're going to go to the prefabs, and so we're going to click on the white square. And then we're going to add a component here. And let's call it, I think it's in Physics 2D. And so yeah, so we're going to look at the box collider. So you'll see here that this is basically, so now it can collide with things, basically, and it'll trigger an event, and we'll work through what those events do next time. But you see here, like typically you want to adjust like a hitbox, like so that's why some games have generous hitboxes, some not really. Typically, it's better to have them be generous on enemies, but not very generous on players, or else players get very frustrated. And so again, in physics, we want to see, is there some sort of triangle collider? Like, oh yeah, like the polygon collider. I see it here. So we're going to edit the collider here. Oh yeah, and it figured it out actually pretty well. So Unity did all the work for us here. So we already have these two nice colliders here. So then they can start triggering like events on triggering. And this is like how you do just basic physics. So like, I'll just show you. So Unity collider. So actually maybe what we'll do is this. So how about like before adding the enemies here, I'm just gonna add a wall basically. So I'm gonna say here is a cube, and then this will represent our walls. And so this also has a box collider, and it can trigger events. And so I'm gonna let's rename this to wall. And what we're gonna do after that is we're gonna go back to our prefab, the white square, and kind of trigger yes, kind of trigger yes. And then we go to the move script. And then we're going to say, like, basically trigger event on collision, right? So trigger event on collision, Unity. On trigger enter. On collision enter. Oh, okay, sure. So this is great because it gives us exactly what you collided with. So let's do that. So we're gonna say now void on collision enter 2D. And so then this is basically what it collided with. Actually no. So like yeah. So we're gonna do this like for each. Oh, and then we can even play an audio source, right? So let's just do this. Like for each cannot, yeah. So for let's see. So what's in collision? So collision dot get contact, get the contact point at the specific index. Get contacts, and then the first contact, right? So let's say call this wall. And so what is the type of this thing? Show potential fixes. Oh yeah, so it's a contact point 2D, right? And then I'm going to debug.log wall dot toString. And then so we're going to say collided with wall. And then wall to string. So cannot convert from method group to object. So can I do cannot convert from method group to object. What does this mean? Does this work? I mean, let's just see if this works. Collided with wall. So this should happen as soon as it hits the wall to the right. So let's see if this works. And it should show up here at the bottom left. Oh wait, the camera's too far away. Main camera. Let's make it a bit further. Position. I think it's the Z position. Should I make this a bit closer? Closer? Huh? Why is it not showing the camera? So this should be fine because it should still collide with it, even if it doesn't see it in the camera. So let's test out that theory. Main scene. Okay, so let's try this out. Did it collide anything? Let's just make it. Let's make it faster at this point. Uh, she was in the prefab. Maybe I'd rather not. Let me just remove the cooldown entirely. Okay. Yeah, it's the way the cooldown works is interesting because like see here it doesn't work very well, but then it works in quick sequences. So there's some weird bug going on with the cooldown logic. I have to figure that out offline. In all cases, though, like this is pretty much though how collisions work, like in Unity. Like you basically come in and you say, okay, well, like if I collided with something, you can basically do this. Like you'll say for each contact. Uh, so for each, let's call them like var contact and collision dot contacts, right? And then you basically do something with the contacts. So this is pretty much how you'll do anything sort of collision, but basically the way this would typically work is you would say, well, if I got a collision, then you can just say something like let's say this is a bullet or something, then let's say you want to decrease enemy HP, for example. And then the second thing you would do is say game object dot destroy. So literally, just like if this collides with something, like get rid of it. No overload to destroy object, destroy immediate. Yeah, so let's see how to destroy game object. Oh, I have to give it this dot destroy this. Okay, sure. So basically this is very common. Like so let's sort of reiterate all the stuff we've done today. Like we did basic music, we did basic art in GIMP. We did basic music in what was the software called, like Borea something. Terry Kavanagh. Borea. Music. Yeah, Bosca Seol. I'd highly recommend this. It was like really easy to use. So we did music here, we did art here. We came in Unity and we started hooking everything up. In Unity, what we learned about was basically adding the music. We learned about creating like different individual tiles, like sprites from our main tile map. And then from those tile maps, we created some prefabs on which we added some custom logic, including logic to move it and logic for physics that lets it collide with stuff. We learned how to move it. We learned how to set up an orthographic camera so that we can like look at something in 2D, a wall, so that we can detect collisions. And we also did animations where we were able to vary from this animation to the one with the open mouth. So while the full game isn't complete, it's not even closed. There's also tons more stuff I'd like to add to this to make this work. It does give you a pretty good idea of all the main things you need to learn about if you want to make a simple game in Unity. Obviously, we can add more stuff like lighting and physics and all like doing photorealistic stuff, ray casting for 3D stuff. But they're all sort of extensions from basic concepts we covered today. So, I mean, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I certainly did. And thank you. Looking forward to doing the next one.